To quote Alice Cullen, it's time.
It's time.
Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, your resident kimchi shipping analyst of The Boys, and today we're going to talk about the new spin-off series, Gen V. I have been given press screeners for the first 6 episodes of an 8-episode season, and that is what I will be basing my opinions and analysis on for the time being. I don't know yet if the powers that be will be providing screeners for the final 2 episodes, so we will just have to wait and see what happens with that. I'm also going to be pre-recording my first few reviews of the series because I will be going out of town for a bit and unable to film. One final reminder before we jump into everything. At the time of recording this video, there is still an ongoing dual strike of both SAG and WGA, so donation links will be in the pinned comment of this video. If the strikes have come to an end, once this video has been published, I will have some of my other videos linked in the pinned comment instead. Much like the original series, The Boys, Gen V has a bold and memorable introduction. This is especially important to do to be able to capture the attention of the audience in that way when you are dealing with an audience that is being bombarded with more things to watch than ever, and you need to do something bold enough to get their attention and be able to back up that flashy introduction with a high level of quality in your storytelling and entertainment that will keep that audience invested. Overall, Gen V delivers a strong first season, or first 6 episodes, and I think that there is all the potential for them to have a decent run of a couple of seasons, so long as they and the main show end before it becomes evident that the story is long past finished, and at that point they're just going on and on because the business people want to make more money. Eric Kripke already let that happen with Supernatural, and there have been some conversations about whether or not The Boys will head in that direction as well. So first, let's get a basic introduction to Gen V. The story largely takes place at Godolphin University, a school for superpowered individuals. The university is a subsidiary of the Vought Corporation, which viewers should already be familiar with from watching the original Boys series from which Gen V has spun off. The series follows a group of young students attending Godolphin, many of whom have a goal of becoming crime-fighting superheroes, but we also follow their more emotionally driven character struggles.
Is that we are all fucked up.
It's lights.
Some might be wondering how closely connected this series is to the original Boys series and how important watching that previous series is to be able to follow this new show. I would say you should watch the original Boys series if you haven't already, because there are a lot of details in the world building that make more sense when watching Gen V if you've already watched that original series. Even though the main characters of Gen V are new, as are their stories, there are many things from the Boys series that ebb and flow as references of how this series very clearly exists in the same world as that one. It's more than just the fact that Godolphin University is a subsidiary of the Vought Corporation. It's the fact that different characters and events are mentioned or shown to ebb and flow throughout Gen V. For example, Jessie T. Usher has a cameo on Gen V, and certain events that happened in season 3 are mentioned in Gen V, so it gives you a clear sense of how those events have ripple effects into what is going on with these students. I've seen some claims floating around online that Gen V is supposed to take place concurrently with The Boys season 4, but I don't know how accurate of a sentiment that is because season 4 of The Boys has not aired yet, so I wouldn't be able to draw a straight line from something that I'm seeing happening in Gen V directly to something that I haven't seen yet in season 4 of The Boys. I also think that the sheer enormity of Vought is better understood if you've already seen The Boys, though there are plenty of examples in Gen V of Vought being this evil mega corporation with a lot of hands in a lot of different types of businesses. That sentiment makes even more sense if you're taking in everything that happens in Gen V and building that on top of all of the unhinged megacorporation tendrils we've already seen in 3 seasons of The Boys. Even Godolphin University is an example of that because you learn that there's schools within the school. Think of it a bit like declaring a major at a traditional non-superpowered university. At Godolphin, there is a division that focuses more so on training young superheroes to fight crime, but there is also a division that focuses on training young superheroes in various things to do with the media, so they can be more or less across mascots and money-making machines for Vought, people who are especially media trained. Although the media training, to a certain extent, is something that all of the Vought superheroes in training are expected to be able to learn how to do, even if you're also someone doing extra training specifically to focus more on fighting crime. We've seen that on the original Boys series, where all the members of the Seven have to make appearances and do interviews with the media, and there's just a lot of calculation on the part of Vought in building up the brands and images of the soups that they are using.
Being a hero is not about glory.
Now, let's meet our characters. The majority of the leads whom the story follows are students at Godolphin University. The young adults of the story are Marie, Andre, Emma, Kate, Jordan, and Sam. Marie has the power to bend blood, which is a more unique power compared to the broader roster of superhero characters we're used to seeing in pop culture. Essentially, she can make blood move, but also weaponize it. So if you've watched some of the show's promotional material, you might have seen her with cuts on the palms of her hands, and then she sends the blood up into the air, and she can lash that blood out in whatever direction she wants with incredible force. There's a lot of versatility to that power because blood is the life force of more or less every opponent that she could theoretically face. I would have to imagine that they'll need to pace the development and strengthening of her superpowers, because if they have that power and just let it loose too quickly, then she will be so powerful that there would be no limits to what she could do, and then there would be nothing that could be an actual threat to her or harm her, but we're definitely not to that point yet. Marie also has a tragic backstory, which you learn about right away in the premiere, and Jazz Sinclair handles that dramatic material really well. It's something she has to consistently carry in her performance because of how much it informs who Marie is and what motivates her. You learn very quickly what the stakes are for her story, her life, and just overall, I find her to be a compelling character with a lot of potential in what the story could do in the future. When Marie gets to Godolphin University, one of the people she meets first is Emma, who is her roommate. Emma is a real sweetheart, and her power is that she can change size. So sometimes you see her and her size is proportionate to everyone else around her, but other times she's extremely small, maybe the same length as a small rodent, as a hamster, a gerbil, something like that. Initially, Emma comes across like she has comedic relief energy or sidekick energy, but actually she shows a lot of range and depth in her material and the things that she has to deal with. All of these main characters who are young adults, they're all going through some struggles in their own ways, and Emma is no exception to that. I can't really elaborate on what Emma has to deal with, but over the course of the season, we get to see Emma go through some pretty dire experiences and also show tremendous resilience of getting through those things and coming into her own. Even though it's only season 1 and I've only seen 6 episodes, out of this main group, I think Emma is probably the one who transforms and develops the most, and she's just a delight to watch. Another character in this ensemble is Andre. He is a popular student, and his power is that he can bend and manipulate metal. It's a fun reunion since he's played by Chance Perdomo, who was in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina with Jazz Sinclair. Andre is different from Ambrose, though, unsurprising since it's a different show and different character. I know I mentioned how Marie has a tragic backstory. Well, I should probably clarify that all of these main characters have to deal with some sort of tragedy in their own way, and Andre is no exception to that. He also has to deal with high expectations from not only Godolphin University as this highly competitive environment, but his father as well. Andre's father is a famous superhero named Polarity, and Polarity is played by Sean Patrick Thomas. I just know that casting was clearly done for the millennials. We have Mr. Save the Last Dance, Mr. Cruel Intentions, and so many other Y2K classics. It's always a pleasure to see him booked and busy. Andre's relationship with his father is interesting, but I feel like we've only just begun to scratch the surface of the layers of what's going on between them. I have a lot of questions about their relationship that are still unanswered, even though I've seen 6 episodes already. I hope we get some more answers, but if we don't get them in these last 2 episodes, I'm definitely going to need a season 2 to unpack more of what's going on in their relationship. Kate is a mind empath, so if she touches someone with her bare hands and tells them to do something or to believe something, they will. Oftentimes, she's shown to be wearing gloves as, well, I suppose it's a precaution of sorts, but also to reassure others around her who know about her powers that if they were to shake hands or if she touches them, she won't be able to use her powers against them. A lot of what happens with her in her character arc and the things you learn about her involves heavy plot spoilers from the do not reveal list. So all I can really say for now is that she's another popular student like Andre, and she is dating Luke, a different popular student and superhero named Golden Boy, who has fire powers. Just think of him like a younger Johnny Storm with far less charisma, humor, or wit. And he's played by Patrick Schwarzenegger. So you have Nepo Baby Luke, Kate, Andre, and another student in that friendship group when the series begins is Jordan, who has been described as a gender shifter. They're also described as bigender in the show. So there are two different actors who portray this character, but they also have other powers to do with strength, being less physically vulnerable, being able to fight well, sort of your run-of-the-mill, strong and capable superhero. Jordan, being a gender shifter, ends up serving as sort of an allegory of sorts for a broader LGBT plus experience. It's not exactly a one-to-one comparison because the character is played by two different actors. The gender shifting was something that was caused by Compound V as opposed to real-life LGBT plus identities. The way that Jordan is trying to come into their own with that identity and occasionally experiencing negative feelings from others, that's where it forays into being an allegory. Otherwise, a lot of their struggles are coming from the same things that all of the other main characters are struggling with. There's just a lot of pressure to succeed in Godolphin University since the school is an extension of the broader looming presence of Vought. Another character in the main young adult roster is Sam, who is very strong to perhaps a greater extent than a lot of the other characters we see. I'm very intrigued by Sam's story, but a lot of what you learn about him doesn't get revealed right away and involves heavy plot spoilers that I'm not allowed to talk about right now, so I will just say that the storyline involving Sam is definitely worth sticking around for multiple reasons. Finally, the other main character is Indira Shetty. She is the dean or superintendent of Godolphin University. She doesn't have superpowers, but that does not mean that she is weak or helpless. She's actually very formidable, not to be messed with. If you are a regular viewer of me on my channel, you will know that I covered Netflix's Bridgerton season 2 very extensively on my channel. So this actress who plays Dean Shetty is Shelley Conn, who played Mary Sharma in Bridgerton season 2. And it was wild to watch her play a character that is more or less the exact opposite of Mary Sharma. The further I got into the season, the more frightening she became. I really hope that if the show is renewed, that she's still alive for season 2, because I think there is a lot more that you could do with her as a villain. I reserve the right to change my mind, of course, but at least with these first 6 episodes, I think she's a really interesting villain. I want to know more about her, and I think it would make more sense for her to not be someone who is so easily defeated after just one season, particularly when you only have 8 episodes with her. The Boys has had villains that last just one season, like Stormfront, but there are also multi-season villains that are either a fixture, like Homelander, or somebody that's built up as time goes by, like Victoria Newman. I think that Dean Shetty has what it takes to last for more than one season. Then again, with Godolphin being under the umbrella of Vought, you will always have room in the story to work your way up that corporate hierarchy and find yet another evil cog in that machine to come into the Gen V space and cause problems for our main roster of soups.
Digging for the truth.
Visually speaking, Gen V fits pretty seamlessly into the aesthetic of the main series from which it spun off. I wasn't sure if the action would be toned down at all, considering that the characters are more or less a full generation younger than most of the main cast of The Boys, but there is still just as much violence and blood as ever before. Being that the powers are different from the main characters in The Boys, you get to come up with some new creative ways for these fights to happen and for characters to engage in violence during conflicts. The fights also have their own feel because multiple characters are still learning a lot and discovering and developing their powers in a way that the main superhero characters on The Boys are not. Those people, especially the members of the Seven, they're more or less at the top of their game, though there is some variation in that roster as well, because you have a character like A-Train who has had his struggle with being addicted to what amounts to performance enhancement substances, and he's also had to recover from various injuries to his body. And then you also have someone like the Deep, who just sucks at any given moment. On Gen V, though, part of why students attend Godolphin University is to get training that will help them to better develop their powers. That means Gen V gets to do what amounts to superhero self-discovery, superhero coming of age, and superhero deconstruction in a way that is unique to this specific series. There's also a more interesting variation in the superpowers of the main characters, so the action and violence doesn't have to come solely from your usual run-of-the-mill, super strong, kick, punch, not easily injured perspective. The violence in the show can also be more emotionally and psychologically driven. I think in particular the fact that you have Homelander as the main big bad of The Boys, and he's more or less just a fascist love child of Captain America and Superman as far as his superpowers go. You have a lot of violence from him that can become rinse and repeat after this many seasons of that show, but with a villain like Dean Shetty, who does not have superpowers, she cannot come at people directly with her hands up the way that Homelander can. She has to be a lot more cunning and covert, which gives this element of intrigue, which feels fresh after this many years of The Boys building up their own unique way of storytelling.
It's just a matter of time before they find out about everything else we're doing.
Gen V has its fair share of satirical humor. There's a character whom I cannot talk about because of spoilers, but they come in further into the season, who is a great vehicle for satirical storytelling, but also of the more outlandish type of humor that only a show in the universe of The Boys could bring. Considering how dark and twisted this world and the story can become, there's a good balance of sprinkling in the more light or humorous moments so that you don't feel so worn down by anything that might be too sad or distressing. If I had been given all 8 episodes instead of just 6, I have no doubt that I would have been able to easily binge the entire season instead of just those 6. I didn't feel any emotional or psychological fatigue, and the humor definitely was part of why that was the case. The other reason I developed this voracious appetite for the story and wanting to keep going was because of all the mysteries of this season. When you're watching the season for the first time, there are so many seeds planted, questions that are asked that you have to wait to see how they will develop. I found that when I went to go back and rewatch the press screeners, I got a whole new insight into the story and certain characters, because these actors will be performing in such a way where they know something as their characters that you as the audience do not know on a first watch, and it isn't until you revisit those episodes that you can get the full context of what you're actually seeing. A character might have a particular expression on their face, or they say something kind of cryptic or ambiguous, and you have to keep watching in order to be able to understand what they were really saying or thinking in those moments. There's just a lot more layers hiding beneath the surface. I remember reading a quote somewhere a while back that I simply do not have time right now to dig up the exact source of, because at the time of recording this, I have to get ready to do a lot of things offline. And in the quote, Eric Kripke was saying something about how because he came up working in Hollywood, having to do the traditional network television model where you were not guaranteed a full season to tell your full story, you had to jump into things fast enough to hook the audience so that you would be able to get that renewal to even finish your first season in its entirety. And that was the perspective he brought to making The Boys. That's why every episode of The Boys feels like an event. A lot of things happen, and you don't have to sit and wait until 2/3 into the season for for the big developments or escalations to happen. And Gen V definitely has that quality too. You don't have to wait long at all for something big to happen, and then you have all of these questions of the mysteries that are going to stem from whatever incident you just watched. Why did that happen? How will the characters go about finding the answers they're looking for? Even having seen all the way up to episode 6, where I'm at a place now where I've seen so much of this story. We get to the end of episode 6, and I have all these new questions that I want to get answers to. And will I get all of those answers by the time we finish season 1? Maybe. I don't know either way. Maybe some questions will be left unanswered for a season 2 if we get that.
A few of us are going off campus. Let's have a good time.
One of the main unexpected surprises I found when watching Gen V was the interpersonal relationships. More specifically, some of the romantic relationships. I suppose if I had really sat myself down and pondered the premise, I should have expected that having a show of mostly young adult characters attending university would involve some romantic subplots. But when I think of the main show, The Boys, there's really only one romance that does anything for me, that being kimchi, of course. But I actually have a bone to pick with Eric Kripke over that, because there was some interview released where he spoke about kimchi and it came across like he was being very dismissive of them as a romantic couple, and I was appalled. You've made us suffer through 3 seasons of Annie and Huey having the same circular fights that I'm sick and tired of watching. Let them be together or just have them break up. Enough is enough. Enough is enough! They were cute at first in season 1, but then you never let them just be in that space of romantic connection. It just unfolded in a way that I did not care for. That's a whole other conversation, probably best left for another time, but more often than not, the romantic connections in The Boys feel secondary to all of the non-romantic drama and action that is happening, as well as just the perpetually high level of danger. In Gen V, because there's more of that shift towards mystery, you have to do a lot more of peeling back layers of what's going on at the school and what's going on with different characters. That leaves room to explore different romantic flirtations and entanglements between different characters. All of that in general was surprising to watch, but there's definitely one romantic pairing in particular that I did not expect to see when the show first started. I cannot say what the pairing is or when it starts, but more or less as soon as these two performers started interacting with each other in a certain way, I just got this prickle of awareness in my brain that something was happening. Romance was incoming, romance was afoot, and I was ready to see what was going to develop. And now I find them so endearing. I need to see how things go with the rest of the season, of course, but either way, I'm sure that I will have a lot to say about them once we get further into this season and I can actually start talking in more details about plot spoilers. My regular viewers already know I have a lot of opinions about romance. Feel free to watch my Grease video essay and how Rizzo and Kaneki are the superior couple in that film. I really hope the show doesn't turn into a ship war situation. All of the main characters are compelling in their own way, and whatever romantic couplings form or separate as the season or seasons progress, this is a universe that tends to have a lot of focus on stories of a larger scale. So I would imagine there will always be something entertaining and compelling to watch, regardless of whatever might happen in the romance department. Overall, Gen V is better than I anticipated. I think that with everything else that's been going on, with the strikes, with the escalating corporatization of show business and this push for franchises, all of that was making me maintain a healthy amount of skepticism with there being a spin-off series for The Boys. Gen V brings the same drama and action of The Boys, but infuses more mystery and intrigue, as well as a few more romantic subplots that are sprinkled in without distracting too much from the large-scale storylines in motion. There is strong character work on the part of the lead performers and compelling arcs for them to play over the course of this first season. Dean Shetty is definitely a standout villain because of how different her approach is compared to other villains we've seen in this universe, with her lack of superpowers, and in a way that almost makes her more threatening simply because people don't really know what she's capable of until it's too late. I am even more intrigued by what's to come in a season finale than most viewers probably are, because they have yet to embark on the journey of this show and getting invested in the story and the mystery and the characters. Once you start going down this rabbit hole, you will have to see it through. I'm really looking forward to sharing more thoughts on Gen V, so make sure that you subscribe to follow along with my weekly coverage of the show here on my channel. We're going to dig into all sorts of details and opinions once more episodes have aired, and I won't have to worry about spoiling things when I'm not yet allowed to discuss those things. Also, please subscribe specifically to help me get to 30K, because I've decided that's my new goal for this channel, and I will be full of gratitude to everyone who helps me reach that.
We're super excited to meet you.